In 1925, Croatia found itself as a key region within the newly formed Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes. This union represented a significant shift in the geopolitical landscape of the Balkans, aiming to unite the diverse South Slavic peoples under a single banner. This was a new country forged in the aftermath of World War I, a conflict that had reshaped the map of Europe and dissolved long-standing empires. It rose from the ashes of the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, inheriting its complex ethnic and cultural tapestry. The dissolution of the Habsburg monarchy created a power vacuum, paving the way for new national entities to emerge. The kingdom brought together South Slavic people, uniting them in a shared political destiny, or so it was hoped. This unification was driven by the ideal of Pan-Slavism, the desire to create a common homeland for all South Slavs. However, it was under a Serbian king, a fact that would become a source of tension and resentment among other ethnic groups within the kingdom. The centralized power structure favored the Serbian elite, leading to feelings of marginalization among Croats and other communities. But this group quickly had a lot of political problems. The initial euphoria of unification soon gave way to deep-seated disagreements over governance, representation, and cultural identity. Most Croats with a strong sense of national identity wanted to rule themselves, yearning for greater autonomy within the kingdom or even complete independence. But the main government in Belgrade, the capital, which was mostly run by Serbs, often disregarded Croatian concerns and aspirations, further fueling discontent. This centralized approach to governance made them more and more unhappy, creating a volatile political atmosphere. Life in Croatia was mostly in the countryside, with farming forming the backbone of the economy and the way of life for the majority of the population. Cities like Zagreb and Split, vibrant urban centers, were important for culture and politics, serving as hubs for intellectual discourse and the burgeoning Croatian national movement. The Croatian Peasant Party, a powerful political force, led by the charismatic Stjepan Radic, became the main group speaking for Croat self-rule, articulating the aspirations of the Croatian people for greater control over their own affairs. They wanted a system where regions had more power, advocating for a decentralized government structure that would recognize and respect the distinct identities of the various ethnic groups within the kingdom. They also pushed for changes to farming, seeking land redistribution and modernization to improve the lives of the rural population. Political talks in the National Assembly, the heart of Yugoslavian politics, were very heated, reflecting the deep divisions and conflicting interests within the kingdom. This showed the big differences, the fundamental disagreements that threatened to tear the kingdom apart. These differences were between those who wanted a strong central government, a unified state controlled from Belgrade, and those who wanted regions to have more power, a decentralized federation that respected the diversity of its constituent parts. The fight for more Croatian self-rule, for greater autonomy and recognition of Croatian identity, was the main thing in politics in the 1920s, dominating the political landscape and shaping the course of Croatian history. These problems that weren't fixed, these underlying tensions that were allowed to fester, would soon push the kingdom into a crisis, threatening its very existence and plunging it into a period of instability. This crisis would usher in a time of strict rule, an era of authoritarianism that would suppress dissent and further exacerbate ethnic tensions. The beginnings of future problems, the seeds of conflict and division, were already there, sown in the fertile ground of political and ethnic discord. By the late 1920s, political arguments in the kingdom got to a breaking point. Croats saw the main Vidovdan constitution as Serbs being in charge. This made people like Stjepan Radic oppose it even more. In 1928, a Serbian politician shot Radic and other leaders in parliament. This ruined any hope of working together. The shooting made the split between Serbs and Croats even deeper, making it impossible to find a middle ground. Because of this, King Alexander got rid of the constitution, closed parliament, and started ruling like a dictator. He also changed the country's name to Yugoslavia. Political parties were banned, anyone who spoke out was stopped, and the borders of regions were changed to make Croatian identity weaker. Croatian groups that opposed the government went into hiding or left the country. Radical groups like the Ustase started to appear. The beginnings of extreme ideas and violence were now firmly in place. Everything was ready for even bigger trouble. World War II broke Yugoslavia's shaky peace. After a try to make peace with the Axis powers failed, a sudden change in government in Belgrade led to a quick German invasion in 1941. The kingdom fell apart in weeks, throwing the whole area into chaos and civil war. Many different groups appeared: the fascist Ustaše, Serbian Chetniks, and Tito's communist partisans. These groups fought both the invaders and each other, with regular people caught in the middle. Fighting in small groups, revenge attacks, and changing alliances were part of the brutal conflict. For Croatians, the war brought huge suffering, people being forced from their homes, and deep divisions. The violence of this time left marks that would affect Croatia for many years. The end of the war would bring a new way of doing things, but not peace. As World War II raged across Europe, the Axis powers, driven by their expansionist ambitions, began to carve up territories and establish puppet states to further their agenda. One such entity was the so-called Independent State of Croatia, often referred to as NDH. This entity was proclaimed in 1941 following the invasion of Yugoslavia. At its helm was Ante Pavelić, the leader of the Ustaše, a Croatian fascist organization known for its extreme nationalist ideology and brutal methods. Pavelić became the self-proclaimed leader, or poglavnik, of this newly formed state. The NDH existed under the watchful eyes and significant control of Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. These powers exerted considerable influence over its policies and actions, essentially dictating its course. The Ustaše regime, with the backing of its Axis patrons, implemented a policy of terror and ethnic cleansing aimed at creating a pure Croatian state. This involved the systematic persecution and elimination of targeted groups. These groups included Serbs, who formed a significant minority within Croatia, as well as Jews, Roma, and other ethnic and religious minorities deemed undesirable by the Ustaše. Furthermore, even Croats who dared to voice dissent or opposition to the Ustaše regime were targeted, imprisoned, and often executed. No one was safe from the regime's brutality. The NDH enacted a series of discriminatory laws based on race and religion, mirroring the policies of Nazi Germany. These laws stripped targeted groups of their rights and paved the way for their persecution. The regime also established a network of concentration and extermination camps. The most infamous of these was Jasenovac, a complex of camps that became synonymous with the horrors of the Holocaust in the Balkans. The atrocities committed within the NDH, particularly at Jasenovac, cemented its place as one of the darkest and most brutal chapters of World War II, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred and extremism. The widespread terror and violence unleashed by the Ustaše regime fueled resistance movements, most notably the partisans led by Josip Broz Tito. Many, driven to desperation, joined Tito's partisans to fight back against the fascist regime. As the tide of the war turned against the Axis powers, the NDH's grip on power weakened. In 1945, with the partisans advancing, the independent state of Croatia collapsed. In the aftermath, those who had collaborated with the regime, including Ustaše soldiers and officials, attempted to flee the country. However, many were captured and repatriated, leading to the Bleiburg massacre, a tragic event where thousands were killed. The legacy of the NDH, marked by widespread violence, ethnic cleansing, and immense suffering, left deep scars on Croatian society. The trauma of this period would continue to haunt the nation for decades to come. With the end of the war, a new chapter began for Croatia as it became part of Socialist Yugoslavia. A new socialist way of life was about to rise from the ruins, promising a different future. The end of the war meant both freedom from fascist rule and the daunting task of confronting the horrors that had transpired, a period of reflection and rebuilding for a nation deeply scarred by conflict. After World War II, Croatia became a republic within Socialist Yugoslavia, led by Josip Broz Tito. The government promoted brotherhood and unity, stopping national pride and anyone who disagreed under a one-party communist system. Big changes meant that industries and land became owned by the government. This changed Croatia from a farming country to one with cities and factories. Tito's break with Stalin led to a special system where workers managed their own workplaces and a foreign policy that didn't take sides. More money, better schooling, and free healthcare made life better for people. But people didn't have much freedom, and showing Croatian identity was strictly controlled. Hidden underneath, national hopes were simmering, waiting for their chance. Tito's rule brought stability, but not a lasting solution. The unity of the country would soon be tested. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Croatia's push for more self-rule exploded in what was called the Croatian Spring. Leaders and smart people demanded economic rights and cultural rights, which led to huge protests. The movement was seen as a danger to Yugoslavia's unity. Tito reacted by cracking down hard, getting rid of reformers and arresting activists. Even though it was stopped, the Croatian Spring led to the 1974 constitution. This gave more self-rule to the different republics and the right to leave the country. This spreading of power, meant to keep the country together, instead set the stage for it to break apart later. The beginnings of independence were now written into law. After Tito died, these changes would have big effects. The country's days were numbered. The next crisis was sure to happen. The death of Josip Broz Tito in 1980 marked a significant turning point for Yugoslavia. For decades, Tito had held the country together through his strong leadership and suppression of ethnic tensions. His passing created a void, leaving the delicate balance of power vulnerable. In the wake of Tito's death, long-suppressed ethnic and economic problems began to surface all over Yugoslavia. Economic hardship fueled discontent, while simmering ethnic rivalries threatened to boil over. Protests and demonstrations became increasingly common, reflecting the growing instability within the nation. Amidst this turmoil, the rise of Serbian nationalism under Slobodan Milosevic further destabilized the region. Milosevic's rhetoric, promoting Serbian dominance, ignited fears and resentment among other ethnic groups within Yugoslavia, particularly in Croatia and Slovenia. The growing Serbian nationalism worried Croatia and Slovenia, who feared the erosion of their autonomy and cultural identity within the Yugoslav Federation. Leaders from both republics began to explore options for greater independence and self-determination. In 1990, Croatia held multi-party elections, resulting in a victory for Franjo Tudman's nationalist HDZ party. This election marked a pivotal moment, signaling a clear shift in Croatian political sentiment towards independence. The HDZ's victory reflected a strong and growing wish for independence among the Croatian people, who sought to break free from what they perceived as Serbian dominance within Yugoslavia. Mass rallies and demonstrations filled the streets, displaying Croatian flags and symbols of national identity. In a 1991 vote, an overwhelming majority, over 93% of Croats voted to leave Yugoslavia, demonstrating an undeniable mandate for independence. The referendum results solidified the Croatian government's resolve to pursue its own path. Independence was formally announced in June, marking a historic moment for the Croatian people. The declaration was met with jubilation by many, but also with apprehension, as the threat of conflict loomed large. However, Croatia's Serb minority, heavily supported by the Yugoslav People's Army in Serbia, vehemently didn't agree with this decision, leading to the outbreak of a brutal war. The conflict quickly escalated, engulfing the country in violence and destruction. The Croatian War of Independence was very brutal. Cities like Vukovar and Dubrovnik were subjected to relentless destruction, becoming symbols of the war's devastating impact on civilian populations and cultural heritage. Furthermore, ethnic cleansing campaigns forced hundreds of thousands of people from their homes, creating a massive refugee crisis and leaving deep scars on Croatian society. Over the course of 4 years, Croatia's army underwent significant strengthening and modernization, gradually improving its ability to defend the country. They eventually launched a series of successful military operations, taking back most of their land in 1995. These decisive operations were called Flash and Storm. The war finally ended with Croatia's independence secured, marking the culmination of a long and arduous struggle for self-determination. However, this victory came at the cost of immense suffering, with countless people being forced to move and enduring lasting pain and trauma. The hard-fought battle for self-rule was ultimately won, but the wounds inflicted by the war were deep and would take years to heal. Croatia now faced the daunting challenge of rebuilding its shattered infrastructure and healing the divisions within its society. Despite the immense challenges, a new time, filled with hope and the promise of a brighter future, was about to begin for the newly independent Croatia. After the war, Croatia faced the huge job of rebuilding its broken country. Bringing Eastern Slavonia back into Croatia in 1998 made Croatia's land complete. The government started rebuilding and changing to a market economy, but selling off government businesses brought both chances and arguments. Tourism came back, making the Adriatic coast a popular place for visitors from all over the world. Changes to make the government more democratic and a pro-Western government helped Croatia join European and Atlantic groups. Working with international courts and putting money into things like roads and bridges showed Croatia's change. National identity and culture grew, with sports and arts making people feel good, like the success in the 1998 World Cup. Croatia moved from the shadow of war towards stability and growth. The country's future was now firmly in its own hands. The journey to Europe was happening. Croatia joining the EU in 2013 showed it was fully part of Europe after years of changes. Being in the EU brought money benefits, funds for development, and free movement. This showed Croatia's new status. Using the euro currency and joining the Schengen area in 2023 further made Croatia part of Europe. Tourism became the main part of the economy, while big building projects like the Peljasak Bridge connected the country. Croatia now faces challenges of growing in a lasting way and doing different kinds of business, but it stands as a stable democracy and a popular place to visit. 100 years after 1925, Croatia has changed from a troubled area to a self-governing European nation. The journey was marked by struggle, strength, and new beginnings. Croatia's story is one of survival and hope, facing the future with confidence. The past shapes the present, but the future is Croatia's to decide.